Um, all right. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nathan Frazee. I'm a project manager from the Boston Parks and Recreation Department, and I'm working along with public facilities on the Public Garden Tool House. With that, I'll get started. I'll turn it over to Helen. Next.
Yeah. So I'm Hélène Guézenec, project manager for Boston Public Facilities, and I'm overseeing the general process and progress of this exciting project. So quick note regarding the recording tonight. The Boston Parks and Recreation Department will be recording the meeting, as you know, and will post to a project web page for those who are unable to attend the Zoom meeting this evening. It is also possible that some of us might be recording the meeting with their phone cameras or other devices. So if you do not wish to be recorded during this meeting, please just turn off their camera and microphone. Thank you. Next. So regarding the virtual meeting etiquette, we want to ensure this conversation is a pleasant experience for all and that the community members and stakeholders are comfortable sharing their comments and questions and feedback. Please be respectful and mindful of each other's time when asking questions and providing comments so that we all can, we're all able to participate in the meeting. Keep the questions and comments project specific and not personal to yield solution-driven discussion. Please wait until all attendees have had the opportunity to ask a question or provide a comment before providing additional questions and comments. And then, of course, you're always welcome you to reach out to me, Hélène Guézenec, or Nathan Frazee, if you have any further questions, comments, or want to extend the discussion after this meeting. Next.
So just going over a little bit of Zoom etiquette, we ask that everybody stay muted during the presentation. At the end of that, we will have a question and answer and a discussion portion. Anybody that's joining in by phone, which I don't see anybody, so I'll skip that. During the presentation, you can feel free to add anything into the chat feature. We'll do our best to answer along, but anything we can't answer during the presentation, we'll make sure we get to during the discussion period. When we do get to the discussion period, we ask that you raise your hand and then you'll be called on and you can we can set it so you can unmute and then please mute once you're done answering a question. Next. So just going over the project team, again, this is a unique project in that you have both Parks and Rec and public facilities. So tonight from Parks and Rec, you have myself, Nathan Frazee, but we also have Christine Brandeo, who is our outreach coordinator, and she's helping us facilitate the meeting. And Ellen, your team?
Yeah, from our team, so we have Carrie Griffin, our director, Evan Rickman, our assistant director of design, Dana DiMatteo, our assistant director of construction, Angela Shan, our senior review architect, and myself, project manager. And I think also Michelle might be on as well. I just can't quite tell. And then from the consulting team, the architectural team, we have Brett Benson, principal for UTL Architecture and Planning. Marisol Perro is actually not on the call, but is part of this project. She's project manager. And then Sherry Yang, project designer, as well as Kyle Zick, principal for Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture. Next. So for our agenda this evening, so we just went through a brief introduction. We'll go through the goals and schedule, as well as the park department goals and objectives, the context, the history and existing conditions, future opportunities, and we'll end with the Q&A discussion. Next.
So the goals and objectives of this project are to address the critical repairs that are needed to the aging building. As additionally provide a maintenance facility that's sufficient for the needs of the public garden, and to improve the interior space for the Parks Department staff and Swan Boats team. What I do want to emphasize is that this is a maintenance building that we have staff that operate out of and the building is critical for them to provide the care and upkeep of the public garden that we all cherish. In its current condition, it's very difficult for them to do that, but they've been super resilient and resourceful on utilizing all the space in the building for storage and all of that. And so it's at a point now that, looking at the condition of it, then it really needs to be addressed to make sure that we're providing a space for our staff that is safe and humane for the work that they do out of there. So this will be an interesting mix of both the community input for the exterior and the interaction with the building, but interior and operationally, that'll be done in a way that meets the needs of the staff. Next.
Nathan, if you don't mind, this is Carrie. If there are any city councilors that are on, I think I see Kenzie Bach. If you'd like to say a couple of, if you would like to have a minute before we start going through this.
Sure. Hi, Carrie. And my colleague Rep Jay Livingstone's on as well. So maybe if he could just say a word, I'll just say hello to everyone and really thank the Parks and PFD team for scheduling this. The Friends of the Public Garden and lots of my constituents have been advocating for this project to get underway for a while now. I see Liz's face popping up in the frame. And so we're really thrilled. I know we talked about this in budget season, but that you guys have actually put somebody on this and that we're having this meeting and rolling forward. It's obviously an iconic building in the middle of an iconic park. And like you just described, it has real functional role in that park. And also, of course, we don't want it falling down. So I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, if you don't mind the indulgence, if my colleague Rep Livingstone could just say a word of welcome as well, that'd be great.
Thanks, Ken.
Jay.
Thanks, Jay Livingstone, State Representative. Yeah, like Kenzie, I'm excited to hear about this. Any improvement that we can make to our parks and giving more tools to the crews that keep them, especially the public garden, in such great shape, I think is important. I look forward to the plan and hearing people's thoughts on it. So, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Carrie, for pointing that out.
Thanks. So here's a really quick visual timeline. As you can see on the left-hand side, we are here, which is schematic design today with community input. So with our with your information and further development, we'll move into design development, which is we'll refine, or the architectural team and consultants will refine the design and progress into construction documentation. We will have another community presentation when we hope to present the design, a little bit more put together and well along. So construction documentations, which will move into construction and then reopening. Next.
So some of these are stock images that, from our Parks Department projects, which deal usually with open space in the parks themselves. So looking at these, I won't necessarily read them verbatim, but just looking at what applies to the actual building here, certainly climate resiliency and health. The building right now is incredibly old, utilities, outdated, inefficient. So we want to make any improvements we do, we want to have that building be as green and sustainable as possible. Next. And so Parks Department goals and priorities, again, really driving home this adaptive and resilient building as much as possible. Next. So now we're going to turn it over to UTEAL to go through their presentation. Brett from UTEAL.
Great. Well, thank you, Nate and Ellen, and thank you, Councillor Bach and Representative Livingstone for that great introduction. I'm going to start by reviewing the surrounding context of the tool house. So just to orient everyone, the Tool House is located in the public garden on Charles Street, just north of the Edward Everett Hale Monument. And as so many of you on the call tonight know, the public garden is an extremely active, highly programmed, yet peaceful refuge in the heart of the city. It's visited by tourists and residents alike at all times of year, and it's really one of the most photogenic places in town. It's also big at 24 acres. And the Tool House is the only maintenance facility in the park. A little over 2/3 of that structure is dedicated to park maintenance. That's only 450 square feet of maintenance area to take care of over 1 million square feet of one of the most precious and historic parks in America. And what's become really clear to us these past several weeks as we've become familiar with the building and how it's used is that Sammy Semesky and the entire Parks Department staff, with critical support from many friends and volunteers, keep this park shining with minimal infrastructure to support their work. So I'll quickly review the history of the structures on the site of the Tool House over the next few slides. So a structure in the location of the current Tool House can be seen on the maps as far back as 1866. The earliest structure may have been one of the public garden greenhouses as seen in this 1882 Hopkins map. Note that the paths lead visitors in one end and out the other. By 1883, the structure is more square in form and the paths have been reconfigured to move visitors around it rather than through it. And by 1901, the square structure is labeled as the Ladies Pavilion. That same map shows another Ladies Pavilion on Boston Common, where the current visitor center is located. And this 1890 photograph shows the Ladies Pavilion with an ornate cupola and pediments. The building seen in that 1890 photograph appears to be a similar design to the public comfort station, quote unquote, for women only, shown in this 1912 issue of Engineering Review. The comfort stations were found all around the city and were staffed by attendants. You can even see the table specifies the hours of operation and the number of attendants required. And in 1946, the current building was designed by architect Thomas McDonough. It replaced the earlier structure. And it's understood that the current building was designed to be reminiscent of the Comfort Station building, which was designed in the Victorian stick style. The 1946 plan shows 7 toilet stalls and a matron's office on the south side and a workshop on the north side. The building was designed as a cement block structure on concrete footings with a concrete slab on grade and wood ceiling and roof structure. The walls had no insulation and they included wood sheathing, pilasters, ornamental brackets under the roof line. The woodwork is all applied sticks or boards to emulate the look of solid timber framing, perhaps a result of post-war material shortages. And the slate roof, the windows, the wood cladding, the decorative wood trim all appear to be original to the 1946 construction. At some point between 1946 and 1997, the layout of the building was changed from the toilet stalls and workshop layout to the current layout. The only major exterior alteration to the building occurred in 1997, when the north door that provided access to the workshop was changed from a double leaf door to a roll-up garage type door. This is a floor plan of the building as it is used today. The interior is shared by the Public Garden Park staff and the Swan Boats Company. Approximately 1/3 of the space is used by the Swan Boats, with the remainder used by park staff and equipment. And about half of the Parks Department site is dedicated to equipment storage. The only office space about the size of a small bedroom. It includes space for the maintenance staff foreman, his staff, and a couch for staff to sleep on during overnight snow clearing duty. The office doesn't even have a window looking onto the public garden. There's also a highly used outdoor paved area between the Tool House and Charles Street. In addition to staff and maintenance vehicles, the yard includes a dumpster, a cabinet for flammable materials, a heating oil tank, a shed for the Rose Brigade, and an unused water pump. Outside of the yard, a 20-foot shipping container provides crucial additional equipment and storage for supplies. So on the next few slides, I'll take you on a photographic tour of the Tool House, and then our landscape architect, Kyle Zick, will speak to the surrounding landscape. So starting with the exterior, you can see the decorative wood trim profile and cupola that give the structure its character. On the south side, which is the photo to the left, a swinging door provides access into the Swan Boat side of the building. Note that the door is a few steps up from the path, so it's not accessible. And on the north side, the photo on the right, a roll-up door provides the only access to the park's maintenance side of the building. Overall, the exterior of the building needs significant repairs. The slate roof and the associated flashings are in poor condition. The roof should be replaced in kind with slate to match the existing with copper flashings and downspouts. There is extensive deterioration to the wooden elements. Some of the pieced together decorative elements have come apart, leaving large holes for squirrels and other creatures to take residence inside. And the bottoms of the vertical sheathing have absorbed water over the years and some have deteriorated. The interior of the park's garage is highly organized, making use of all the space available. This is what currently takes care of 1 million square feet of park space. And a roll-up garage door is the only access in and out of the building for park staff. In the middle photograph, you can see the small office where staff are frequently required to spend the night during the winter. And on the Swan Boat side, most of the small space is used for storage, with 2 toilet stalls that are open to the rest of the space. The paved area behind the tool house is as tightly packed and organized as the interior. There is a single dumpster that is angled so a truck can pull in from Charles Street and empty it. And you can see there is no way to close off the yard from the surrounding park, so visitors frequently wander through this busy staff area. A 20-foot long shipping container sits outside the fenced yard and houses large equipment such as 2 golf carts, which is used to pick up trash from trash cans around the public garden, among other uses. A skid steer used to distribute bulk materials, and 2 large mowers in the warmer months. In the winter, the mowers are switched out with snow blowers. So Kyle will run through the next few slides to discuss the surrounding landscape.
Thanks, Brett. So the tour continues thinking about the setting of the building. So what's particularly interesting about the way the building is located is it is purposefully receding, and it's on an edge of the landscape, and it's surrounded by specimen trees. It's not drawing a lot of attention to itself, even with its color. But there are fantastic, beautiful specimen trees surrounding it. Next slide. An attitude related to the landscape is also apparent in the left-hand photo, where foundation planting of shrubs helps to mask and hide the building even further. The right-hand image shows that they're bursting at the seams. You know, they have bulk materials and other materials and equipment beyond the maintenance yard in the building. And some of them are winding up under one of these specimen trees. Next slide. The maintenance yard itself is screened with a wooden fence. The public facing portion of that is generally buffered with shrubs like seen on the right-hand side. The wood fence is in tough shape. There's rot. It's been hit either with snow removal. It's got missing boards. Next slide. But again, the public garden has this rich palette of site furnishings that are unified. Benches with cobble, bench pads, trash receptacles, and lights. That palette materials is used throughout and around the tool house building. Next slide. And what's interesting about that unified palette of materials is the walkways are the same within the public garden, and they extend right up to the building on 2 sides. And that can be a little confusing for the public because they're attracted to this building thinking there's public facilities of some type. The sidewalks on Charles Street are brick and they're in tough shape. They're settled and heaved, and they're, because of the cross slope, aren't handicap accessible.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So there are a number of opportunities with the renovation of the tool house. We're going to present a few of our initial thoughts in the following slides, and we'd really love to hear more from all of you during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So first is to improve the storage and facilitate maintenance. As it stands, the maintenance needs of the public garden, as Kyle said, they are literally bursting from the seams. And with renovation, we see an opportunity to collect the storage and maintenance functions, within a better organized envelope. Second, we see an opportunity to improve the interior spaces for both the Parks Department and the Swan Boats. For the Parks Department, we can provide a more humane work environment, one that meets the needs of the staff and provides a view of the park they are charged with maintaining. And for the Swan Boats, providing a safe and secure storage and office space that isn't literally inside a toilet stall would be a tremendous improvement. And next, providing convenient access to the exterior would be a huge improvement for park staff. Every time they want to go outside or every time someone knocks on the door, they have to roll up the garage door. That takes time and it wastes a tremendous amount of energy. In the winter, freezing air floods the space every time the door is opened. And providing a better way to get outside directly impacts energy efficiency. So in combination with modernized all-electric systems, we will be exploring on-site renewable energy options to minimize the building's energy use. And then looking beyond the direct footprint of the building, we will also be looking at clarifying the pathways that lead to the tool house. We want to address the current layout that really invites visitors to the building, which creates a distraction for the maintenance staff and increases the potential for a dangerous interaction with the equipment stored there. And we want to protect important trees in the garden around the tool house, just as Kyle explained. The shipping container is stressing the root zone of a very grand English oak, and we want to make sure the important trees in the garden are healthy for many years to come. And as we explore the renovation of the exterior of the building, we want to respect the history of the building and the park overall. So we've shown that this site has a long history of buildings on it. And while this 1946 version of the building is not the oldest version, it is still historic in its own right at nearly 80 years old. And we want to be sensitive to that fact. And with the right approach, we think the tool house can actively contribute to the historic experience of the park rather than try to shrink away from it. And so with that thought on the table, I'd love to start off with posing that as a question for all of you attending tonight. We'd love to hear your thoughts of how the tool house can continue to support the historic treasure that is the public garden. So thank you everyone for your attention tonight, and I'll open it up to questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Brett. All right, any questions, comments? Looking for hands being raised. Liz, I see your hand up first.
Okay, thank you. First, thank you so much for doing this work. We've met before, and I just want to reiterate our being so thrilled, Friends of the Public Garden, that this is underway, that focus is being put onto this building. It's one that's been slowly and quietly deteriorating before our very eyes over here. And I'd love to have you. I know that you're not ready to show us alternatives or options, because you have stressed, and it's absolutely true, that this place is bursting at the seams because it was a bathroom building. It was not built for a maintenance function. It's trying to do something that it needs to do that it was never intended to do. So we have that rear courtyard area, which is full of cars and some other storage containers. How do we maximize the space in this building? How do we provide as much as possible for the maintenance function and not move back out into the yard, or there's only so much square footage that you can play with. So do you have any thoughts about how you can, there's certainly organization, and maybe you're thinking about the levels. It's all kind of funny, 2 levels inside. But after you figure out, do some magic inside to maximize every square inch that you've got in there, then what happens next?
Well, I'll start, and then Nate can continue. I mean, I think everything is on the table right now. Liz, thanks so much for your comment and for your comments leading up to this as well. You have been a great resource for information for us to get to this point. So looking forward to continue to engage with you and the rest of the friends. I think everything is on the table in terms of thoughts about really how to optimize what we have. As you pointed out, it is a tiny little footprint to take care of so much park. And there's only so much space with the historic building that we have. We do think that that maintenance yard is going to be a good opportunity for us, and we want to be super thoughtful about how we can make most efficient use of that space. Have a lot of conversations with Sammy and the entire staff, as well as the Rose Brigade and the Border Brigade and the Friends, to really understand how the park is taken care of, so that we can maximize that the space that's allocated to it without detracting from the experience of the garden.
Well said. Yeah, and I don't have anything to add to that other than per Brett's comment. Really at this point, anything is on the table to make it function as best as possible. And certainly all of those have to fit the context in landmarks review. So we'll be pushing those to see what is the best solution for all involved. Thanks. Marjorie?
Hi. It seems to me that this building is being used a lot as a garage, and it's not really a garage. It's more of a building. And is it impractical to think of building some kind of sympathetic garage to be the garage portion of the park needs in the parking lot? I also wonder if parking is needed, since it's across the street from a huge parking lot. Could the people who use the parking park in the common garage? I mean, could there be some formula where there are spaces available for them when they need to be there? That seems like a wasted use in a garden with such special space. And then also, I would like to put push in for facilities. I feel like there aren't any bathroom facilities. I know there's some proposed for the common in the new plan, but I wonder if this little building could be reconfigured so that there were a couple of public bathrooms, the room for the swan boat people, and then some office space for the parks people, and then a garage space that was more working area. And I'll go with that.
Sure. Those are all excellent points. I'll speak first to the parking in the garage. That is something we are exploring. Currently, we do store some equipment over there that already exceeds the space we have here. So there is some storage over there, but we are looking at them as a possible option to alleviate some of the cars that congest that space. There is a need for at least a few of those spaces to stay there just from a security and access standpoint. Speaking with, and Lynn can speak to this a little bit, maybe from the swan boat standpoint, and the ability to be able to drop off and pick up, as well as transfer of some of their resources. It's really imperative to the ability to have a car there for them to have safe access and exit. And then I'll speak to the facilities standpoint. Obviously, as you saw, this is a very finite space here. So realistically, without a larger expansion of this, that most likely is not the ability to have public facilities here, because with public facilities, we also need a vending service or a management service that can help keep those facilities clean and operated. And so once you start to add, that space along with the facilities, it really exceeds the size that we have here. As you mentioned, we do have a proposal for facilities directly across the Charles Street crossing. So by proximity, hopefully when that gets implemented, there will be facilities in close proximity here. And then Brett, do you want to talk a little bit about the idea of an additional garage?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a great idea. And Marjorie, I appreciate all of your comments. I think they're spot on. In a way, this is, there are a lot of puzzle pieces that we're moving around on the site within a very finite, as Nate said, area. So to the extent that we can take some of the pressure off of that maintenance yard by relocating a parking spot or two, that might open up additional opportunities for us within the maintenance yard, we're absolutely going to be looking at that. And I really appreciate that comment. We're still very much in the kind of information gathering phase, and we're trying to get an inventory of all the types of uses and the equipment and that are happening now, and try to be forward thinking about what the park is going to need in the future, so that we can, provide a maintenance facility that doesn't work just for today, but is going to work for many years to come. So thanks for the comment.
Great. We also have a comment in a question in the comment period in the comment section that says, what happens to the existing functions uses during the renovation? That's Colin Zick is asking that. Brett, do you want to take your initial stab at that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will absolutely, part of this plan is going to have to think very carefully about the sequencing of any renovation work so that maintenance can continue to function throughout the duration of any construction project. That's something that we'll also be exploring as part of this plan. And we're going to work very closely with Nate and the Parks Department, and especially Sammy as well, to think about what is the kind of interim condition for maintenance before the renovation is complete. But it's a great point. Thank you, Colin.
And Allie, I see your hand up.
Hi, thanks so much for inviting the public to join. I appreciate it. And really, I was fascinated to come across this building lately. I walk my dog in the park there often, and I see this structure, and I really had no idea what it was being really used for. So appreciate the transparency and sort of the struggles that you guys are undergoing. I did put out a request onto Nextdoor. It's a neighborhood app. And then notified people last night of this meeting, and I did get a couple comments back. I'll probably put the grandiose idea out there if you would. Somebody had mentioned, and I think it would be kind of neat, but I understand the confines of the surface area that you're working with and maintaining its historical perspective. But you know, there was an interest for sort of a cafe or sort of an interactive, you know, either, you know, juice bar or something that, you know, could have a little of, you know, food or libation available to people. There is water in the park, but, and, you know, but it would be nice, maybe kind of like the Owl's Nest idea, but that might be a little bit too far out there. So I realize I'm going to get some backlash on this one, but, you know, the Owl's Nest idea, though, that is going pretty well over, I think, on the Esplanade. So that's kind of the grandiose idea, but I do want to second Marjorie's request. And I think this also is sort of to support the cleanliness of the park, is the need for restrooms and to really reduce, you know, people that are not using the park to what it's intended for in emergencies when there's no bathroom nearby. So to put it politely, but I just wanted to put that out there that I think at least restrooms would be really nice to have. And I understand that comes with added infrastructure and cost and maintenance, but I think that it might outweigh some of the unpleasant things that we do come across in the park. But I'll stop there. And another idea would be to potentially maybe have a little small children's book exchange program there. You know, it's nice to keep the kids busy in the park, but also sometimes they just, you know, the parents might want them to have a little time out and read books on a blanket or something like that. So that might be another less expensive and less intrusive opportunity as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Those are all things to ponder, right?
Yes.
I appreciate you putting it out there and getting additional feedback and expanding our outreach as well. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any hands going up. I'm going to scroll through the images to see if maybe people are raising their hand on their cameras. Oh, Tim. Hold on 1 second, you're muted here. You should be able to unmute now. Still muted, hold on.
Tim,
You're
if you
still
hit the
muted.
button.
Yeah, you're still muted. You got it on your screen. You have to hit the,
There
there
you
we
go.
go, perfect.
Okay, Brett has commented in a previous meeting, but I just wanted to see if I could follow up and ask to what extent you might have been able to uncover any constraints that might impact the project that emanate from the National Park Service and the status, historic places status of the park and the building.
So I can start, and Nate, you can probably fill in some of the details. We are expecting that there will be a National Park Service review component to whatever we collectively decide to move forward with, as well as a local Boston landmarks review process as well. It's a important historic place, so there will be a lot of eyes on us as we move forward. But I think all for the better to make sure that we're all making the right decisions. But there will be plenty of opportunity for review and comment in public forums such as the Landmarks Commission and for oversight agencies as well.
Brett, are there not preceding that, are there not some guidelines that sort of give some direction to that ultimate conversation?
Absolutely, there are. So the National Park Service and in the Department of Interior publish guidelines on if there's new construction relative to landmarked or historic buildings, how you should articulate new construction versus the historic material, and we'll absolutely be following that guidance. That has been a kind of has been guiding principles for architects as they work with historic structures for decades now. And if we contemplate new construction, we would certainly be following those as well.
I think I had an understanding, but I don't know whether it's accurate, that there's also classifications for structures in the park, which would apply to this particular building. And I wonder if that's accurate, that there's a classification of support structure or something like that that probably has some significance in the guidelines.
It might. I think it will. A lot of it will depend on the level of changes that we might contemplate. I think our initial take is that the building, as I said, while not the original structure on the site is still historic in its own right, at nearly 80 years old. And so we need to give it its due respect in that regard. So I don't think we're contemplating major changes to that historic structure. But there might be others that, based on ideas that have come up tonight, and that others, might give us feedback through emailing Nate or Ellen that we would take into consideration as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's probably a little too early to be specific about what the criteria will be until we have a better idea of how we would move forward.
There had been some preliminary indication that evaluation of the deterioration of the building was so far along that was the impression I had was it was a strong consideration was being given to new build. Is that on the table still?
So we have completed our existing conditions analysis of the building. And while we've seen a lot of deterioration of the exterior cladding of the building, it is still structurally sound. Structural soundness is one of those criteria that landmarks folks would look at in terms of determining whether new construction or demolition would be warranted. I think in our case, what we found is that the deterioration is primarily aesthetic and not structural.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you for that. I realize it's early in the process, but that sort of clarifies some of the rumors that had been around this conversation. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your comment, Tim.
Yeah, and just to build on that too, as Brett had showed earlier, some of the structural component of this building is the fact that it's really a masonry block building that's cladded with the wood, right? So the block interior, which is providing the structural support for everything, is still sound. With that being said, in the guidelines on construction and renovation to historic buildings, this is a very unique project in that it's a replication of a previous one. So it is not, as Brett showed earlier, it's not the 1800s building, it's a replica of that. So it it will be, there will be a process of working with them on how those guidelines apply to this building, because it is a bit unique in that it is a replica in and of itself. But as Brett mentioned, there's still significance to that. So I don't think it's going to be a simple cut and dry applying those. I think it's going to be working with them in working through the review and working with the preservation groups to see what is appropriate here.
Well, that's great. And I maybe I could just add to the thought about the functionality of the building. From probably everyone who is alive, this building has been the only thing they've seen in the garden. And one of the functions of being seen is its ornamental contribution to the experience of the very fine landscape. And so in it, some of the features, exterior features, decorative features that some might consider historic, really there's a functionality to that, that's what makes it a beautiful building in the beautiful landscape. And so that aesthetic functionality is a part of the whole laundry list of functions, which I'm sure you're giving some attention to.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point. And thank you for those comments and input. Kenzie, Councillor Bach asked in the chat if we could go through the timeline again. So Brett, do you mind flipping back through that?
Sure.
I'm gonna apologize for flipping through all the slides real quick here.
Yeah, hopefully we don't make everybody too dizzy.
I know, yeah, maybe close your eyes as the flipping happens, so. Great, thanks. Ellen, do you want to speak to this? I think, and I can just chime in right before she does. This is intentionally a little vague. And some of that goes back to Tim's excellent points here, is that it's hard to put a definitive timeline on how some of these conversations and designs are going to play out, because there's a lot of key players that we have to have involved in this. So Ellen can speak to these, but the one thing is we just don't want to put predetermined time restrictions on any of these, and we want to be as forthcoming with you all about this process that and set expectations as realistic as possible.
Yes, I agree, Nathan. Thanks. So we are in schematic design, like we mentioned earlier. And of course, with tonight's input, I know Brett's team and consultants will continue to develop a program and a building. And our next steps here will be to come back in design development to present hopefully maybe a couple or building plan and options. And we're hoping that will be this winter, and following that presentation, we'll be moving into and then following many other discussions. As Nathan mentioned, there will be a lot of input from different organizations and different entities. We'll be hoping to move into construction documentation at the beginning of next year or mid next year. And then again, that is a little bit of an unknown at the moment in terms of when the construction could also happen. It's going to be potentially dependent on timeline and weather seasons. So we'll keep that in mind, but our goal is to keep everybody informed and post any new information on the webpage so everybody is aware of the progress of the project.
With that being said, we do have a project page for this. You should have seen that on the registration, as well as by registering for this meeting, we now have your email contact. So we'll make sure that you'll get meeting notes from this as well as notification for future meetings. So I did have Councillor Bach added additional comments. I'm going to just read it out loud just to make sure everybody does see and can hear. At some points in prior years, folks have suggested an interpretive element here. I think that goes back to some other comments earlier, but it sounds like you're leaning towards making it more functional spot for park operations and not really aiming to attract park goers. She does wonder if at least an interpretive plaque, etc., on the wall might help with some of the curiosity. And then Christine added the tool project webpage. No worries, Kenzie. I'm more than happy to verbally articulate it. Brett, do you want to talk about that? Because I know we have talked a little bit about how the exterior of the building facing the park does have basically rules. Do you want to talk about how, and maybe Kyle can also weigh in on how that kind of interface can relate with the public?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great comment. And I think Councillor Bach, that comment in combination, Tim, with your comment earlier about the aesthetic of the tool house being an important contributing component to the overall aesthetic of the park and the overall experience of the park is a good one. And in a way, they can kind of work together. This idea of signage and the aesthetic of the building really kind of amplifying and enforcing that historic nature of the park is something we will absolutely be working with, looking at. And I think that in combination with something that Kyle pointed out, which is that the pathways right now really invite people up to the building and make it look like something that is open to the public, despite its very pure maintenance function. And so that's a real design challenge for us to work out, is how do we position signage? How do we clarify the use of the building and the aesthetic of the building so it is both continues its very vital maintenance function for the park, but also contributes to the experience of it. So we're looking forward to developing some ideas around that to share with you at our next meeting. But I think they're both really excellent observations and one that we're going to be working on in the weeks ahead.
Kyle, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think Brett said it really well. And I think the maintenance component and the public visitation component is the challenge here. And we have to make sure it's safe from a perspective of the people working there, and moving a skid steer, backing up, moving lawnmowers in and out, and the public that might be attracted to the area. So that's something we're going to look at real hard.
Great, thank you. Rep.
Yeah, thanks. Well, first, thanks again for doing this process. It sounds like you're being very thoughtful about the historic nature of the building in the park, as I'd expect. One of the things that I was curious about is if you had, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, a project area. So the area of the park that you're considering as part of this project.
We don't actually. So Brett did highlight that obviously contextually where this lands, there's a crossroads of paths, crosswalks, there's the bike lane, there's the cars that come in and exit in and out of this. So at this point, I don't think we're necessarily confining that to a designated park space. Some of that's going to be from what we get from feedback from community users about the thoughts and space around that. And in essence, we want to create a space that surrounds us that works for everybody. And so rather than predetermining the extent of this, obviously it can't be the entire public garden, but at this point we didn't want to restrict it down to anything that may eliminate some input that we would be getting. Thanks for noticing stuff. Any other comments, questions? Oh, Counselor Bach put, what's the basement situation here? How deep is the foundation of the building? And is digging out underground a potential piece of getting you more space? Recognizing that separate from the potential of adding garage-like structure. Brett, do you want to speak to the foundation?
Sure. So the foundation is a very simple slab on grade. It is unusual in that it is stepped. So even within the building, it is not a flat space. So thinking about accessibility internal to it is one component of what we'll be studying. Your point, Councillor Bach, is a really good one. In addition to thinking about going down, we thought about going up into the attic space. We are very challenged. The footprint of the building is quite small. And so when we think about expanding the amount of footprint that we would have by either going down or capturing some space in the attic, we also have to consider how we would get there, whether it's by a stair or an internal elevator. And as we have started thinking about that, it's a kind of trade-off between the floor area that we allocate to that vertical circulation versus the floor area that we take away that would be available right at grade. But it is something we'll continue to look at as we get deeper into our study, and probably one that we owe everybody the next time we come back to show different options for how that would look.
Great. Thank you. Any other hands, hand raising or comments? Scrolls through the cameras. Not seeing any. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you did not speak or for whatever reason, certainly feel free to email Ellen or myself, and we'll make sure any of your input is added to the meeting minutes. We will be issuing meeting minutes and posting the presentation to the project page that Christine had shared out in the chat. We do anticipate, as Brett just mentioned, coming back to you guys with some of the proposals of how the space may be redesigned in a way that works both for the Swan Boat team, our maintenance facility team, and the public in your all's comment. So we do anticipate coming back in this winter time period, and we'll be sure to share out ahead of that meeting when that is planned. So if I don't see any other comments, questions, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for all the great input and feedback that we've received, and look forward to speaking with you all more about it. All right.
Thanks so much, everybody, for attending.
Thank you, everybody.